This video is sponsored by Alpha Draft, where you can play fantasy esports. People have won tens of thousands of dollars in a week. You can play Counter-Strike, CSGO, you can play League of Legends, Dota 2. The link will be in the description box. You can go and find out more there. Sign up through my referral link. Give me some of that money, pay me. So, Dennis Edman, the player who's most recently joined Kingwin at the beginning of this month, earlier in July at least. Initially, that alone will make people who didn't follow earlier in CSGO be like, who is this guy? Like, what's the significance? Why is the hype behind him? But actually, even going beyond his recent time in CSGO, he has a history that goes back into 1.6. So, understandably, the hype right now is like, why is he joining Kingwin, a team with a lot of speculation on them? Then they go to face it stage 2. They managed to upset Virtus Pro in a best of 3, win a map off Na'Vi in a best of 3. So, okay, understandable that people are kind of hyped around this guy. Now, to go back into 1.6, to go back to his history, he's been playing a long time, actually. Like, you can find him way back in, like, 2008, playing on... Well, at times in his career, he's played frequently with the mixed team Dot, which is a Swedish mixed team. Many players have played for it. And what they used to do is enter online cups and enter LANs where you'd have a bunch of like semi-pro players. And the way I always categorize semi-pro is where in Sweden you'd tend to have like 3 teams that were legit pros, like proper org, sponsorship, money to fly to events, attend most of the big events. And then anyone who's not in those top 3 tended to be like waiting in teams of like mixed teams and teams that often rotated players and went to the smaller lands like the Swedish lands or the Nordic lands, and they were just kind of waiting, biding their time till they'd get the chance to be like a standout player and get an opportunity in one of those top 3 teams, ideally one of the top 2 like NIP, SK, Fnatic, depending on the era. And you were kind of waiting around here, and a lot of those people eventually did get their chances, and then sometimes it didn't work, sometimes they went back down. And so the key thing was this semi-pro scene was always very active, and Dennis was one of these players among this big group of like 20-30 people who you saw again and again in the same lineup, same small teams. So in teams like Dot, you'd have players like Dennis, you'd have Hivlan, famous movie about him, Mane, who later got a chance in Fnatic, Pronax briefly played with them because he wasn't like an elite player, but usually be like the leader of the 3rd, 4th best Swedish teams. Who else do you have? Keys. Basically all the players where a lot of them were like skilled semi-pro Swedish players, riflers mainly, a couple of AWPers, and a lot of them had movies made about them actually back in the day. Some of them very good actually. Keys 3, check it out. So when he played with these teams, he also played with another team which is similar sorts of players, Playzone, that had like Barbar, who was an AWPer on it, had Mane, like I said. Then one of his first serious teams was like legit teams was actually Rage Esports. And what was key about this team was this team had Peter in it, it had Pronax in it, had Mane at one point in time, and this was a team that actually was not looking bad. Actually, it was trying to vie to be sort of the 3rd or 4th best team in Sweden. They went to some lands, Dreamhacks. This is around 2010 now. We've moved forward a couple of years because over the other period in time he's playing with this semi-pro teams. And now in 2011, what happens was at the end of 2010, Get Right and Forest left Fnatic in this big dispute over they wanted to kick DSN, maybe Khan as well. The Fnatic org chose to side with Khan and DSN. Get Right and Forest leave Fnatic, this place where they've accomplished so much, especially Forest had been there like 5 years. And they go to SK Gaming. And when they go to SK Gaming, they try to make a super team. And the players they kept from SK Gaming was Face, Valle, and Alan. And Alan, at the first event they had, they bomb out in the group stage. They ruin all the expectations. Everyone's like, is this team even going to be that good? I thought it was going to be like a super team of Swedish players. After that tournament, it's announced that like Alan's having some sort of health issues or he can't play for some reason. And so for the World Championship of IEM, because that was the first event, that was the European Championship where SK had that result. For the World Championship that season, for season 5, SK decides to use Dennis as a stand-in, even though technically he's still at Rage, I think, under contract or something like that. So in he comes, and he's going to be the 5th guy. And actually, it works really great. In the group stage, they top the group stage. They win 3 games. They tie 2 games. One of the ties was actually with Na'Vi, who were the reigning IEM World Champions, had dominated the year before, and tied them on Train, which was Na'Vi's home map that they had an insane record of winning on because they were gods of CT side. So that alone was a great result. They were doing so well. They hadn't lost a game in the group stage. And what that meant in the old IEM World Championship format, which is one of our majors, was that if you finished top of the group, you skipped the first round of the playoffs, you moved straight to the semi-finals, and you just waited there for someone to win their quarter-final game where they would play you there in the semi-finals. So in this semi-final, these guys, Dennis and SK, end up playing Frag Executors, who were the team who later became ESC, and now are obviously known as Virtus Pro. And so this was Neo and Taz, yeah. and then Pasha as well. This is when they had Pasha. He'd been for just over a year at this point in time. But then the other two players were two of their other old school players, Cuban and Lord. So actually 4 of them were of the gold. I won't do the symbol there. 4 of them were from the Golden Five, the original one, and then they had Pasha as well. Now this semi-final is actually the one that a lot of you will have seen this video about. It's a video that's like, is it like gaming? Is it? It's not just a game or something. IEM, it's not just a game. It's the one where after the game, after the third map, Frag Executors win the game, and yet they all burst into tears and they're crying and they're holding each other and calling their parents. And the reason why is because the way this series goes, at nearly all phases, it feels like Frag Executors is going to lose. They have to lose. They should lose. The way it's going, they can't win. And especially on this third map, this Dust 2, where they're down and then they're in economical situations where they shouldn't be able to win around. And then even when they win around here, they're losing guns and they shouldn't be able to get the next ones. And they're on the wrong side and they're facing a strong CT team. And everything is just the amount of emotion. It's understandable because so many things had to happen. So many miracles in a row. So many great plays. And then mistakes from the enemy were even needed. And so it was such an emotional moment. And they win this. And then obviously they go on and they play Na'Vi in the final. Now what people forget here is that Dennis is on the other side. He's on the SK side, and the SK side is, I mean, they're crushed. You know, it's gone so badly. So anyway, top 4 still a good result, even though obviously the expectation there was since they'd done so well in the group, right, they've got a chance to win it now, and obviously they don't even make the final. So even so, 3 games, it was a solid result. So after that tournament, they decide to use Dennis again. They're going to use him for Copenhagen Games, and at this tournament, they do well, they get out of the group, they win their first 2 rounds of playoffs, even beating his old team, Rage Esports. They beat Moscow 5, which is actually Dosia, and I guess you wouldn't know many of the other players in that lineup, but okay, Dosia, I'll just say for now. Adren, no, actually, he wasn't in that lineup. I didn't know why I said that. He didn't even play with the Russians in 1.6. So then they go into the final of this tournament, and it's a repeat matchup. They have to play FX again. The problem is, here's the context. They played their semi-final at like 2 a.m. The event was super delayed on the last day. And the Poles didn't finish their final, which was like an epic 3-map series, one of the best series ever with MTW, the Danes, until like 4 a.m. So the grand final didn't start till like 4:30 a.m., 5 a.m. And SK has just been waiting around all day, super tired. The Poles are super tired as well from the energy they're playing the game, but they at least warmed up to a degree. And FX just crashes them, 16-0. Like the first map, I think Dust 2 was the one. I think it was Dust 2 was the one that was reasonably close, but the second map, whatever it was, complete blowout by the Poles. And I remember there's even a video where in Swedish someone put the subtitles on where from SK even said like, it feels like we just went over to the Poles and just said, here's a big pile of money, have it. That's like how SK had no chance in the final. So again, they've done well. Dennis has done well in his first tournaments, but ultimately disappointed the way it ended. Now he plays a little bit. He plays like an Inferno online tournament with SK, but actually at this point, this is where his exit comes. Because first of all, there was all this dispute going on. Like SK was saying, yeah, we've given him a contract, we're going to sign this contract with him. But at the last minute, they actually decided to take Delpan, the AWPer, from Fnatic. And so instead, Dennis is the guy they eschewed. And that was the end of him as a top pro in 1.6. Like later on, he played with Lions for like a month. They went to a LAN, they did like okay. Lions at the time was like Crystal, who you maybe know from 1.6 CSGO, now he plays in Team Acer. And they had a bunch of other actually quite well-known players. Nico, not the one from CSGO, the Swedish one. Sniden, who was like an old school player. Furto was like a skilled player, but yeah, whatever, we won't get into that. Then he kept playing in the dot like online with all these semi-pros. They were always insane. They were able to beat MTW and actually win an online competition called Loop Games or whatever in like July of 2011. And then in in middle of 2012, he's still playing 1.6, plays with dot more there. He was on and off. He was still hanging around the scene. So then comes CSGO. Now, what's interesting about his CSGO career is he's actually only played something like 6 LANs in his whole CSGO career. So the first time of significance where you really sort of see him show up is in early 2013. He joined up with Absolute Legends, which was Pronax's team. And he had some other known 1.6 players, particularly Zneil. And in the early days of CSGO, these were considered like a legit team battling to be like the second best Swedish team behind NIP. But no one was close to NIP from Sweden at the time, especially. And no one had the great accomplishments to go up there with the top teams from Sweden aside from NIP. In fact, everyone used to say at the time, where's like the second best Swedish team? Because Fnatic hadn't got their Swedish lineup yet. It was a different world. Now, skip forwards in the year. In September of 2013, CSGO is still reasonably pretty small. He joins up with what is LGB. And at the time, the LGB lineup was Exum. The player he joined with was Olaf M. So Exum, that was Makalele's old name. He joins with Olaf M. Crims is already in the team. And then Wheaton or Sky Kitten, whatever you want to call his name. That's the lineup, okay? That month, they immediately have an initial breakout, a pretty impressive result, which is they qualify to go to the Tech Lab. Oh, no, I think they came as a replacement. They go to Tech Labs, which is like an exhibition final, and they play in Minsk, so in Belarus, and they play Na'Vi there. And they beat Na'Vi 2-1 in maps. They were actually, it was, one of the maps was like a stomp for LGB, one was like a super OT, multiple OT game for Na'Vi. So they win this series over Na'Vi. Now you have to realise at the time, this is Na'Vi in one of their worst forms actually. Like Edward and Marklov had already left to make Astana Dragons, and they'd been the stars from 1.6. So at this time, they had no Edward, no Guardian, because he doesn't join till the next year. And actually, yeah, I think he doesn't join till 2014, unless I'm mistaken with that one. I don't know, I'd have to check that. And obviously no Flamey, because he only joined this year. So they had seized, though. They had Kibaken, and they had the old players like Senya, Zeus, Starix. So now we go forwards. They went to ESWC. At ESWC, actually kind of underwhelming. They lost to Clan Mystic, which was the team who eventually shockingly managed to win the whole tournament, which was like Apex, Kiyoshima, Kaylee, and they lost to Complexity, which was, Swag. Who else would it have been? Nothing, Shongas, Semphis, Hiko. So pretty standard there. Those teams, the Clan Mystic one I guess was borderline, but they did go on to win the event. The rest of them expected results there. So then the major comes, Dreamhack Winter, the first major, November 2013, first CSGO major. They're in a group where they play Na'Vi in the first game. They beat Na'Vi. Then in the winners match, they play Clan Mystic, the team who'd beaten them at ESWC just beforehand. They wreck Clan Mystic on Inferno. Utterly fucking smashed them. You have to realize Clan Mystic did so poorly at this event. Everyone rightfully wrote them off as just a fluke the way they'd won ESWC, because it was kind of actually, if you saw the way that tournament went. It was great, but it was a fluke. They not only wrecked them, they won them like 16-2 or something. And Dennis, this was like one of his breakout LAN performances. He went fucking bananas. He had like 25 kills or something in this game. It was nuts. So here's the problem. They win their group. Congratulations. Did they win the group? Yeah, they must have. You get to play against NIP. Cheers. I like that. So they have to play NIP. And in the series, they obviously are expected to have no chance. This is when Very Games has become the number one team, but NIP's still definitely number two. They're still the team that's like always making fight. In fact, they've never failed to make top four of a tournament, and obviously we're in the round of 8 now, so history says they've never failed to make it past this stage. They never would lose to teams like this, especially lower level teams. You had to be like a world-class top level team to beat them. But map 1, they beat let me think, was it map? Yeah, it was map 1. LGB beats NIP. It was like 16-14. I think it was Inferno, that one actually. It was like a shocking result. They managed to win that. Next game was... No, fuck. It must be Dust 2, actually. Yeah, I got that one wrong. Okay. They beat NIP Dust 2 first game. That's right. Then map 2 is Train. I mean, NIP were gods on Train, even though that was a slightly different version because we've gone back to the retail maps at that point. But NIP wrecks them on Train. Then the third map is Inferno. Yeah, third map was Inferno. And unfortunately, this one, NIP wrecks. So actually, it was kind of like fake hack. Like the first one, you're like, oh my God, they just edged NIP. Could they do it? But actually, they couldn't really. And I have to say, in this series, it was like all of them had a sick game one. That's part of why they won. Dennis was actually fairly underwhelming in this series. He had like a good third map when they were getting wrecked anyway, so it didn't really matter. But the rest of the series, yeah, he was just kind of a much of nothing or not that good, actually. So he didn't really have a great series there. But then, not very long afterwards, I think it was the next month, there was actually a tournament within Sweden, the Swedish Cup Grand Final, and there'd been these cups qualifying you in there. So at this tournament, in the final, they play NIP again. And again, it's a 3-map series. This time, they win a map and they lose 2. Same exact story, actually. They win the first map 16-14. This one was the Inferno one. They win this one 16-14. They lose the second map, Mirage, in overtime. So they actually might have won 2-0. It was a possibility. And then the third map is really close. And NIP wins on Dust 2. Now this one, this super close series, is one where from memory, I believe this was actually where NIP tried letting Get Right be the in-game leader, so people often thought that was part of the reason as to why the problems were. And obviously later on, they would actually put Fiflaren back as the in-game leader. So you have to give NIP a bit of a benefit of the doubt there. They were kind of messing around, trying different things, experimenting. It wasn't the same as like the God tier NIP to a degree. But anyway, impressive result. You think, I expect more from this team. Now here's what's interesting. In 2014, the team changes players anyway. They take out Exum, Makaleli, and Wheaton. Those players exit the team, and they bring in Twist and Sipe. And these two players have both been on the semi-pro scene, both around the absolute legend type sort of teams around the second, third best in Sweden. And Twist especially has a bit of hype around. People always thought he was good in 2013. Why wasn't he in a better team? He had some sort of issues. So they bring in this lineup, and now you've got a lineup of a bunch of good players, a bunch of skilled players especially. So they go to the first major of 2014, the second major overall in CSGO, EMS1 Katowice. And in their group, what do you know? They play Na'Vi, they beat them. This is the one that had Guardian on though. They beat them quite convincingly. They play Complexity. Remember the team that had beaten them at ESWC? They beat Complexity on Dust 2, one of Complexity's better maps. And in this game, again, second game of a group stage, Dennis has a breakout performance. This time he has like 35 kills. He goes absolutely fucking ham on the Americans. Now, by winning the group, they get out, but they have to play Fnatic, the actual reigning major winners from the previous major, in the round of 8. So again, people are expecting, okay, Fnatic should win this. Fnatic's a team that's won the major, and they finished third at Dreamhack Invitational in February. So, okay, they should be able to beat LGB, right? Actually, they upset LGB in 3 maps. They lose to them on Inferno, starting out. They beat them on Mirage. They beat them on Train, and the Train game was a classic. It's a 16-14. Fnatic was really close to getting through, but LGB pulls through, which earns them a semi against Virtus.pro. Now, Virtus.pro go on to win the tournament. They only lose 1 map in the whole tournament, but that 1 map takes place in this series. Now, here's some context, though. Even though Virtus.pro loses their home map Mirage in overtime, the second map of the series, to the LGB guys, they wreck the other 2 maps. So, yeah, it's really in that sense, but you never really were going to win the series. So they finished, anyway, top 4 at a major now. They finished top 8 at the major before, Dennis and those guys, top 4 at this major. Everyone's thinking, right, the world's their oyster, right? They go to Copenhagen Games, the next tournament, next month. They managed to get through the tournament. They even beat like Exum, I think, in like property. They get to the round of 8 now, but they have to play Virtus.pro again. This time Virtus.pro beats them fairly heavily on Mirage, and then it's like a close game on Nuke, but Virtus.pro wins anyway. So they lose that series again, and this series in particular, this was like one where Dennis struggled, actually had his issues here. So I always wondered if he had some sort of confidence issues against the better teams. I mean, he did well against Fnatic, but you know, sometimes I could sense that. That's actually pretty much the end, because okay, the team hangs around for a few more months. There's these rumors that they're going to become Alliance. If they hold it together, then things fall apart, and he says, I'm going to get a job in the summer. He still plays for some teams. He plays some online games, tries to qualify for like Dreamhack Winter 2014. It's not really going on, and for all intents and purposes, he's gone out. But he's never going to become a pro again. Olaf and Krim's go on to incredible success in Fnatic. Even Makalele's joining up with NIP for a while at the end of the year. Then Wheaton's in Kingwin earlier this year. And then in July of this year, it's announced Dennis is joining Kingwin. He's replacing Wheaton, his old teammate, in Kingwin. He's going to join up with Makalele, his old teammate. He's going to play with Scream. He's going to play with Fox. And so the first LAN they have was the one just recently, Face It, Stage 2. And at this tournament, they lose to C9. Expected. No one's expecting much from Kingwin. Kingwin went out of DreamHack Summer in last place. Admittedly, Dennis is an upgrade. They play Virtus.pro now. They beat Virtus.pro in a best of 3. First game, they lose in overtime on Train. VP steals it. Second game, they win reasonable margin, Dust 2. And then the third game is Cash, a map that was one of Virtus.pro's classic maps in late 2014, that they were one of the best teams on. I still think are a very strong team on. They're the team that defined the whole mid-control approach on T-side. Kingwin thrashes them 16-0 on this map. A perfect game to a degree. Then, because of the format of the tournament, to get out of the group, they're going to have to play Na'Vi to get out. Now, that's a hard task. Navi's the third best team in the world. They've won tournaments recently. They've made all these finals, all these top 4s. They're on a hot streak right now. They lose the Dust 2 opener to them. They win Inferno against Na'Vi, which is no joke. That's pretty good. But then they get wrecked on Overpass, which is kind of like a niche Na'Vi novelty. That's a fucking tongue twister right there. Niche Na'Vi novelty. Try it. And so they're out of the tournament. But okay, good tournament. You beat VP. You won a map off Na'Vi. This is pretty legit begin. So now people are thinking, hey, where can they go? Where can this team go? What can happen to Dennis? Now, Dennis's form hasn't been anywhere as good in Kingwin as it was in LGB. That's the thing to make. Like, I'll talk about in 1.6 first while I describe him as a player, okay? In 1.6, like I described from the career he had, he was a good semi-pro player, but he was nothing spectacular. Like, no one ever considered him a potential star. No one was ever, before he actually got the SK opportunity, screaming like, oh, you've got to try this guy. I hope he's next. Or remove this player from Fnatic, put him in. He actually, his name almost never came up in that sense. He was someone where when he did get a chance in SK, he had a couple of good games. I remember in the group stage, he was showing off some good AWPing. like on train, he was having some decent rifle moments. But even then, even in SK, he didn't look like a super beast. He just had a one-off good tournament. And when they brought in Delpan and they went on to dominate, no one really gave a second thought to him. Now in CSGO, it was different. Once he came on LGB, he was one of the stars of the team. I mean, first of all, he's the in-game leader, but they had such a run-and-gun, aggressive, coordinated style that even as the in-game leader, he was flagging heavily. And in this team, okay, Olof M was the best player. He was the one where everyone really wanted him to get his shot in nip, but Dennis was the second best player. Like, listen, Twist was the player everyone was hyped, and he looked like he had sick aim at times. But actually, Twist was kind of hit and miss. It was Dennis who was like the legit second player, and you thought, oh, he has a good chance. He was a good rifler, good aggressive player, decent aim, or at times good aim, in fact. And he would even AWP sometimes. He could actually do AWPing reasonably often. Like him and Olof, the thing was they both could AWP whatever they wanted pretty much. So okay, he was considered one of the potential Swedish stars earlier in CSGO, and at the time was becoming a star with LGB as they were rising through the ranks. Now, it's been a while. He's only just come back to being a pro. I wouldn't expect that from him right now. Maybe it's a possibility in the future, and obviously that would make that storyline of Kingwin's future matchups a lot sexier if he's around in that sense. And it'd be interesting to see him and Makaleli going against Olof and Crims in big tournaments in best of threes. That'd be pretty cool, right? Bit of history, bit of old rivalry reunited in a sense. So yeah, that's who Dennis is.